नमस्कार. व्यासपीठावर उपस्थित असलेले ज्ञानपीठकार आमचे इष्ट भाई मावजो धर्मानंद नंदकुमार पाणिग्रे आमचे सगळे इष्ट राजे पवार दीपा मुरकुंडे. I know slightly we are stretched and the group from Madgaon also is here. Normally Madgaon can reach these days because of the road little late, and Leopard already said about that possibly they may reach late subsequently. Before liberation of Goa, in the first half of 20th century, there were four important poets in Portugal. One was Alvaro Campos, Alberto Cairo, Ricardo Reis, and Fernando Pessoa. Pessoa died somewhere in the mid of the century. After 10 years after his death, they found a big wooden trunk in his house. Dharmanand also has a wooden trunk in his house because whatever he has published is a subset of what he has written. He has written so many things. And then those researchers, they found that there was only one poet in Portugal before 61, and that was Fernando Pessoa, and he was writing under different names. And they also found his very important diary, that was a book of disquiet. It was also written under different name, Mr. Soares, Fernando Soares, his name. The issue here is, in the act of writing, unconsciously, many times unconsciously, one becomes somebody else. And what I feel, Dharmanand has become somebody else. He is somebody else from, say, Pali Hill, Mumbai. He is somebody else from Shantines, Ranji. He is somebody else from a Kalangut with a canvas and brush in his hand. I leave it to your imagination. The second issue for me was, as it was also Panigri said, that Dharmanand is a filmmaker. And yes, that filmmaking has an effect on his writing of his poetry. But filmmaking is different and poetry is different. Filmmaking, you need several things together. There is a chaos, there is an impurity. You need locations, you need actors, you need script, you need dialogues, you need a lot of technical things also, camera, editing, and most of all, you need money, because film is no longer an art, it's an industry. And the director, the filmmaker, has to create an order out of this chaos. But alternately, when somebody is writing a poem, even a filmmaker is writing a poem, he starts with the purity of a blank paper. What a poet needs? He needs a paper and a pen. That's pure thing. I mean, that's also true for a painting, that's also true for a music. If you read Dharmanand's poets, reread, see it again, you will find those are visuals like a film. There is a sound like a music. There is also a beauty and colors like a painting. Dharmanand continuously has been painting in his poems without a brush or without a paint. He's showing us the visual world around us in a different photographic angles. Somebody said the wide angle, the close angle, all those angles, but without a camera. There is also music in his poems without actually musical instruments being played. Most of the good writers and even the good filmmakers over a time, they moderately invent a style, a language of their own. I feel that this is the third poetry collection by Dharmanand, and this collection somehow, I have not read first two, But what I find is Ramanand has been successful in inventing his own style and language. And that is, I consider, one of the greatest achievement as a poet, as a filmmaker. Third issue for me was when a poet like a Dharmanand writes a poetry or a collection of poems, it is also a reaction to the present world. So what is that present world today? Yes, it is a pandemic time. There is a fear of a death. There is a forced isolation. But then, as a human beings, we have seen isolation. We have seen death. What is new in this pandemic? What is the new last 2 years is basically a feeling, a sense of disorientation. Increasingly, whatever we hear and whatever we read is factually incorrect. And still, most of our friends and most of the majority of the people, they keep on believing in that falsehood, those half-truths, those lies. It has a dangerous impact on any democratic society, but more than that, it has created a sense of a disorientation. And this was a time of a disorientation where you need somebody from a Shantiness who can orient us, who can guide us, at least show us a compass, a direction. So therefore, at a very personal level, I feel that it was a sudden disappearance of Satish Sonal, and the void which was created after his disappearance, now that looms large over this poetry collection. I know most of the psychologists, what they have done, they have identified the stages of the way which human beings they react if there is a sudden death in your family, or you go for some checkup and you find out that you have got a terminal illness. The first reaction with the sudden death or terminal illness is denial. How can this happen? How can this happen to me? But the second reaction is anger. The anger explodes. Anger explodes the moment you are not able to deny the fact. Third stage, you start negotiating. You say, yes, we are all travelers on this planet. And yes, we have spent a lot of time together. So it doesn't matter that one goes early and I follow him. Then, after all these three stages, the fourth stage is also important. And that's the sum total of all these three, that's the depression. The depression sets in. And the last stage, the fifth stage, is acceptance. Yes, we come in terms of that reality. If you see Raman's poems, you see all these emotions. Particularly that poem, the disquiet, the aswast, what Murkundi said, and I agree with that. Now that poem, if you read, it's on page 36, if you read that poem, what you will find, the anger explodes, and it's beautifully written. The anger explodes, but at the end of the poem, the depression sets in. So you will find this mixture of these emotions, and many of these reactions are of an unconscious mind. It's not necessarily that the poet is aware of that. And for a reader, you have to read over and over again to understand this. I can sum up, I don't want to take much time, I can sum up the mood of the poet in writing this poem. Now that's basically of a disquiet mind. The mood of a disquiet mind, but there is a dilemma. And that dilemma in a simple words is how to go on living when your spirit is broken. Now that you see in many of the poems. How to go on. And as the literature and the philosophers have already told us that the death doesn't harm us more. It is the living, it's a beloved living which harms us more, particularly when our spirit is broken. That we have seen, because we have seen several deaths last 2 years. And we have seen how it affects us. Lastly, I have seen Dharman personally, the way he was intensely involved in writing these poems. He was intensely involved telling these poems to his friends, the friends of Satish Sona. I have seen how the book came out beautifully about Dinesh Manerkar, the printer, the layout designer, and then it's very rare to have a hardcover beautiful book for poetry, because the place for poetry is shrinking in bookshops. Even people rarely take a book of collection of a poem and completely read it. In spite of that, that is my personal opinion. Again, Dinesh Manerkar has done a beautiful job, and he, as he announced, he has a vision. He said he will concentrate on the translations in Konkani to other languages. Now that's one of the very important vision he has, and good thing that he is doing. After seeing all these things, particularly his involvement in writing the poetry, having this program, calling the friends of Satish Sonak after the end of this third wave, I feel that the soul of Satish Sonak may have found a release. Thank you.